I once turned an old pair of boots into a flower planter. Not because I'm thrifty, though let's be honest I am, but because those boots had history. And now, they're blooming with petunias. Here's the thing. You don't need a big budget or fancy tools to create a garden that turns heads. What you do need is a little imagination, a few forgotten odds and ends, and maybe that quirky teacup collecting dust in the back of your cupboard. Today we're diving into one of my favorite kinds of gardening. It's creative, it's sustainable, and it's just a little rebellious. We're talking about repurposed magic. Everyday objects transformed into stunning garden treasures. From tin cans that become herb pots, to walking canes that stand tall as plant supports, this episode is packed with 20 clever ways to give old things new life. And let me tell you, there's something deeply satisfying about turning yesterday's junk into today's joy. Stick around because these ideas aren't just beautiful, they're full of heart, full of memory, and perfect for making your garden feel like you. Idea number 1. Tin can herb towers. You know those old soup cans we all have piling up under the sink? The ones we swear we'll recycle, eventually. Well, I finally did something with mine. And no, it wasn't soup-related. I took 3 tin cans, scrubbed off the labels, gave them a little coat of paint. Okay, I may have gotten a bit carried away with polka dots, and stacked them vertically with a wooden dowel running through the center. Boom. A charming little herb tower that now sits proudly by my back door. Now here's the beauty of it. Not only does it save space, but every time I pluck a sprig of basil or mint, I get this oddly satisfying feeling like I just beat the system. No fancy planters, no trip to the garden center, just good old-fashioned ingenuity. Plus, there's something special about using a can of green beans from 1987 to grow fresh rosemary in 2025. It's like your pantry gets a second act, a standing ovation even. And if arthritis or limited space makes traditional gardening tough, this little vertical garden is just the ticket. It's accessible, lightweight, and easy to water without bending over like a contortionist in a yoga class. And here's the fun part. This is just the first twist in a whole garden full of surprises. Ready to see how a chipped teacup can become the star of your flower bed? Let's keep going. Idea number 2. Teacup flower pots with a story. I know I'm not the only one who has a cabinet full of mismatched teacups. You know the ones. The floral one from Aunt May's set. The chipped one you couldn't throw out because it reminds you of Sunday mornings with cinnamon toast and radio shows. Well, let me tell you what I did. I took that sentimental clutter and turned it into something blooming brilliant. I filled those little cups with soil, popped in some violas and baby succulents, and suddenly my garden had these tiny, elegant bursts of charm peeking out between the greenery. And the best part? Every teacup tells a story. One came from my first apartment. One from a garage sale where I haggled like I was on a game show. Another from my wedding china, which I chipped during a dramatic spaghetti incident I'd rather not relive. Now they sit outside, catching the morning sun and reminding me that beauty doesn't come from perfection. It comes from history, from memory, from letting something old find a new way to be seen. And if you're worried about drainage, just pop a pebble or two in the bottom. Or better yet, let nature do her thing. Plants are surprisingly forgiving, more so than most house guests. But don't wander off yet, because up next, we're turning something even more ordinary into garden gold. You ever look at a wooden crate and think, you know what, that could be a raised bed? You're about to. Idea number 3. Wooden crates that grow more than just veggies. Okay, picture this. It's spring. I'm standing in the garage, tripping over a wooden crate that once held oranges. Or was it onions? Either way, it was collecting dust, splinters, and maybe a few spiders. Most people would have tossed it. I saw a garden bed with potential, so I lined it with a bit of burlap, filled it with rich soil, and planted lettuce, radishes, and a few marigolds just for flair. That crate turned into the cutest little raised bed you've ever seen. Now here's why this is pure gold, especially for those of us who don't exactly leap up from a kneeling position like we used to. It's elevated, portable, and way easier. On the joints. No crouching, no digging a hole the size of Kansas. Just simple, satisfying gardening right where you want it. And if you're feeling fancy, a quick coat of wood sealant will help it last longer outdoors. Or don't. Let it weather a little. Give it that rustic, I know what I'm doing kind of vibe. Your neighbors will think you hired a landscape designer. Plus, there's something poetic about turning a crate built for hauling into a cradle for new life. Kinda makes you pause, doesn't it? But hold on, because we're not done yet. What if I told you the next great trellis isn't in the gardening aisle? It's hiding in your closet? Yep, that old walking cane just found a brand new purpose. Idea number 4. Walking canes as whimsical trellises. Now before you gasp, no, I'm not saying you have to give up your favorite cane. I'm talking about those old ones collecting dust behind the coat rack. You know, the ones you kept just in case but haven't touched since disco was still on the radio. One day I looked at mine and thought, why does this look like it belongs in the garden? It had curves, charm, and just enough personality to make a tomato vine feel special. So I stuck it into the soil next to my climbing beans, gave it a little pat like I was tucking it in, and wouldn't you know it, that cane became a showstopper. Elegant, nostalgic, and unexpectedly sturdy. Here's the magic. It's not just a plant support, it's a story standing upright. Maybe it once walked you through a tricky patch or belonged to someone you loved. Now it's helping something else grow. And that, my friend, is the heart of repurposing. If the handle has a hook, even better. Let a vine wrap around it like it's dancing. Or hang a tiny wind chime from it and let your garden hum. And if anyone asks why there's a cane in your flower bed, just smile and say, that's my vertical support system, and it's got more miles in it yet. Now, if you think that's clever, wait until you see what I did with a broken chair. Let's just say it's never been more planted in its purpose. Idea number 5. The broken chair that found its roots. So there I was, mid-spring cleaning, staring at a rickety old chair with a wobbly leg and a seat that had seen better days. It squeaked, creaked, and let's just say, if it were a person, it would have asked for early retirement. But instead of tossing it out, I hauled it outside, gave it a good dust-off and thought, why not make this a throne for my begonias? I popped out the sagging seat, nestled in a planter bowl, filled it with soil and a mix of cascading flowers, and just like that, I had the classiest little garden sculpture on the block. Now every time someone walks by, they stop and say, oh, how charming. And I say, well, she was falling apart, so I let her bloom instead. There's just something poetic about it, isn't there? A chair that once supported people now supports life. And let's be honest, who among us hasn't? Felt a little wobbly now and then, only to find a second act in the sunshine. And don't worry if your chair's missing a leg, an armrest, or a sense of purpose. That's where the creativity kicks in. Add a little paint, wrap it in ivy, or let it stay weathered and wise. It's not about perfection, it's about personality. And speaking of personality, wait till you see what I did with a bird cage that hadn't seen a bird since 1983. You won't believe how freeing it turned out. Idea number 6, the bird cage that let the flowers sing. Let me set the scene. I was at a neighborhood yard sale, you know the kind, where people try to sell half-used candles and VHS tapes nobody can play anymore, when I spotted it. A dusty old bird cage, slightly bent, missing its swing, and looking like it had been through a tornado and a garage flood. Naturally, I fell in love. I brought it home, gave it a gentle cleaning, and decided that instead of locking anything inside, I'd let something bloom out of it. So I filled the base with moss, tucked in some trailing ivy, and dropped in a few pops of color with tiny impatience. Then I left the door open, not because anything was trying to escape, but because there was something beautiful, almost symbolic, about letting the garden grow free. No cages here, just petals pushing boundaries and vines slipping through the bars like jazz music on a summer night. Now that birdcage sits on a little pedestal in my backyard, catching sunlight and compliments in equal measure. And every time I see it, I smile, because something that once felt a little sad, a little forgotten, is now absolutely thriving. It's funny how giving new life to old things can sometimes teach us how to do the same. But don't go anywhere yet, because the next garden masterpiece, let's just say it involves an old colander, a few zip ties, and a whole lot of sass. Ready to hang with me? Idea number 7, the colander that hung up its kitchen duties. Now I'll be honest, this one made me giggle the whole way through. I was rummaging through my kitchen cabinets, trying to find a lid that matched anything. Spoiler alert, it didn't exist, when I pulled out an old metal colander. You know, the kind that's a little rusty, maybe a handle's loose, and for some reason still smells like spaghetti even though you haven't used it since 2009. Well, instead of tossing it, I grabbed a couple zip ties, a sturdy chain from the toolbox, and thought, this baby's going airborne. I flipped that colander upside down, lined it with coconut fiber and potting soil, and planted a mix of trailing petunias and sweet potato vine. Then I hung it up like a chandelier on my porch, and let me tell you, it absolutely sings. Here's why it works so well. The holes in the colander make perfect drainage. The built-in handles make it easy to hang. And the shape? Utterly charming. Like your garden just got invited to high tea with a bit of attitude. And don't worry if the metal's a little worn. That patina, that's personality, honey. Your plants don't want a perfect penthouse. They want a place with character. Now every time I water that hanging colander, I feel like I've pulled off some kind of glamorous gardening heist. Like I've tricked the universe into giving me beauty on a budget. But if you think that's clever, wait until you see what happened when I rescued an old dresser drawer from the curb. It's what I now call my flat pack flower bed. Stick with me. This one's a drawer-dropping moment. Idea number 8, the dresser drawer that bloomed back to life. All right, picture this. I'm walking the dog, minding my own business, when I see it. An old wooden dresser sitting by the curb like it just got dumped after a bad breakup. Drawers hanging. Out, one missing entirely, and a big free sign taped to the front like a badge of shame. Well, guess who came back later with gardening gloves and a wheelbarrow? I hauled one of those drawers home, not the whole dresser, I'm not that ambitious, and gave it a little love, sanded down the rough edges, drilled a few holes in the bottom for drainage, and lined it with plastic to keep it from falling apart completely. Then I filled it with soil, tucked in some cheerful zinnias, and stood back like I'd just created a masterpiece. And honestly, I had. It turned into this beautiful rustic flower box with a story to tell. Each chip in the wood, a little character. That scratch down the side, drama. It was like turning a soap opera into a garden bed. And the best part? It's portable. I can slide it onto a bench, stack it with other drawers for a tiered look, or move it to chase the sun like a cat on a windowsill. It reminds me every day that just because something's been left behind doesn't mean it's lost its worth. Sometimes it's just waiting for the right person to see its potential. And speaking of potential, have you ever looked at an old ladder and thought, that could hold more than paint cans? Because up next, I've got an idea that climbs its way straight into your heart and your garden. Idea number 9, the ladder that climbed right into the garden. Let me tell you, this one might be my proudest moment of garden genius, and that's saying something, considering I once turned a mop bucket into a lily pond. I found an old wooden ladder leaning against the side of my shed. It was weathered, slightly wobbly, and if you stepped on the wrong rung, it made a sound like an old man trying to get out of a recliner. But something about it whispered, "Don't give up on me yet." So, I didn't. I propped it up against the fence, dusted it off, and turned it into the most charming tiered plant stand you've ever seen. Each rung became a shelf for potted herbs, little flowering annuals, and even a trailing ivy that now thinks it owns the place. I even hung a few little lanterns and wind chimes from the sides for some extra flair. Suddenly, that forgotten old ladder wasn't just useful, it was art. It's perfect if you've got limited space or if bending down into garden beds just isn't in the cards anymore. Everything is right there, eye level and easy to reach. Plus, it gives your garden that layered, magazine-worthy look without costing you a dime. Every time I see it, I think, that ladder used to hold paint cans. Now it holds joy. And just wait, because next I'm going to show you how I turned a pair of rain boots into planters that are as adorable as they are downright stubborn. You're going to love this one. Idea number 10, the rain boots that refuse to retire. All right, confession time. I had this old pair of yellow rain boots. You know the kind. Rubber, a little cracked. Probably bought during a storm warning that never actually happened. They hadn't been worn in years, mostly because every time I put them on they squeaked loud enough to startle birds 2 blocks away. But I couldn't bring myself to toss them. They had personality, a certain sass, if you will. So one afternoon, I brought them out to the garden, filled them with potting mix and planted bright red geraniums right inside. Just like that, those boots went from "Why are you keeping those, Wanda?" to "Where did you get those?" Now they sit proudly by my back gate, toe to toe like they're standing guard, blooming like they were born to be flower pots. What I love most is the playfulness. They add instant charm and a smile to anyone walking by, plus the built-in waterproofing, perfect drainage. Who knew those old stompers had one last perfect role to play? And if your boots are a little too holy, no problem. Stick a small pot inside. Let the boots do the styling while the plants stay cozy and contained. It's a sweet little reminder that just because something no longer fits your feet doesn't mean it can't fit beautifully into your life. Now hang on to your garden gloves, because next I'm bringing out something from the sewing box that's about to thread its way into your heart. You won't believe what I did with an old wire whisk. Idea number 11. The wire whisk that got whipped into shape. Okay, I know what you're thinking. A whisk? In the garden? I had that same skeptical eyebrow when I first held it in my hand. It was one of those old metal ones, the kind you stop using once you discover silicone and a decent electric mixer. This thing had been clanking around in the kitchen drawer like a forgotten relic from the Jell-O salad years. But then I looked at it and thought, this has Flower Fairy written all over it, so I gave it a new life. I flipped it upside down, flared out the wires just a bit, and, wait for it, turned it into the most delicate, whimsical little hanging planter you've ever seen. I nestled in some moss, tucked in a tiny air plant, and hung it with twine from a tree branch. Suddenly this old cooking tool looked like it belonged in a botanical art gallery. Honestly, it gave my backyard a little Midsummer Night's Dream magic. And, if you're feeling even craftier, you can paint it, dangle some beads or charms from the wires, or tuck in fairy lights for evening sparkle. It's a tiny touch with a big impact. The best part? No one will expect it. That's what makes it delightful. It catches the eye, invites a smile, and reminds you that even the strangest things have beauty, just waiting to be uncovered. And speaking of surprises, you will not believe what I did with an old picture frame. It's got plants, it's got style, and it's coming up next. Idea number 12, the picture frame that became a living portrait. Now this one made me feel downright fancy. I was reorganizing a closet. You know, that one where you shove everything you don't want to deal with, and I stumbled on an old picture frame. No glass, no backing, just the frame. It used to hold a portrait of my cousin's cat dressed as Napoleon. Long story, don't ask. Anyway, most people would have seen junk. I saw potential, artistic potential. So here's what I did. I turned it into a vertical garden, a living picture. I stapled wire mesh across the back, filled it with a little chicken wire and sphagnum moss, and gently planted succulents through the gaps. Then I tilted it upright, set it on an easel, and suddenly my backyard had its very own botanical masterpiece. I'm telling you, it looked like something out of a designer magazine. But instead of costing hundreds, it cost me, well, nothing. Just some leftovers and a dash of daring, and you don't even have to get that elaborate. You can glue mini pots to the frame, or even dangle air plants from strings for a looser. Freeform look. It's your garden gallery. Let it express you, and if anyone asks what it is, you just say, "Oh, that's my seasonal wall art. It changes with the blooms." Instant sophistication. Now buckle up, because next, I'm turning kitchen drawers into hanging planters. And yes, they still open, sort of. Stick around, it's about to get delightfully drawer-matic. Idea number 13, the hanging drawer that swung into style. All right, let's talk about drawers, not the kind you wear. Though if you've got floral print bloomers, I'm not here to judge, but the kind you find abandoned in the corner of a garage, looking like they gave up somewhere around 1978. I had one. Peeling paint, one wonky handle, smelled faintly of lemon pledge and broken dreams, but I couldn't let it go. Something about it just dared me to get creative. So I did what any slightly stubborn, garden-obsessed person would do. I added rope to each corner, reinforced the bottom with a bit of plywood, and turned that old drawer into a swinging hanging planter. Yep, I hung it from a tree branch like a little floating garden island, filled it with soil, tossed in some trailing lobelia, sweet alyssum, and a few pansies just for good measure, and it came to life. I mean, it literally sways in the breeze. now like it's showing off. There's something magical about it too. It's rustic, it's unexpected, and it gives the whole space a sense of movement. Like the garden's dancing with you just a little. And here's a tip. If your drawer's a little too delicate for hanging, rest it on a vintage plant stand instead. Still adorable, still full of charm, still better than collecting cobwebs in the garage. But oh, don't go anywhere. Because next I found a way to use a rusted-out watering can that leaks like a gossip at bingo night. And somehow, it turned into one of the prettiest things in my garden. Curious? Good. Let's keep going. Idea number 14. The leaky watering can that poured out beauty. Ah yes, the infamous leaky watering can. We've all had one. You go to give your plants a nice drink, and suddenly it's watering your shoes, the path, your pants, everywhere except the actual plants. I had one just like that. A charming old metal can with a spout that had seen better decades. It leaked from the bottom, the side, and possibly from a crack in time itself. Totally useless for watering. But oh, so full of potential. So I did what any garden romantic would do. I filled it with flowers. I packed the base with soil, nestled in some cheerful pansies and creeping jenny, and let a few vines trail out of the spout like they were gently spilling out. And suddenly that poor leaky can looked like it was pouring blooms. It became a focal point in my garden. Everyone who saw it smiled. One neighbor even said, "It's like the flowers are flowing out of it on purpose." And I said, "Darlin', that's the only kind of spill I don't mind cleaning up. You can set it on a stone pedestal, tuck it into a flower bed, or even hang it from a fence for a little elevated flair. Add some fairy lights inside if you really want to push it over the top." I did, and now it glows at night like a secret garden lantern. It just goes to show, even when something's all rusted and leaking, it still has a beautiful purpose. And speaking of old treasures, wait until you see what I did with a forgotten chandelier. Spoiler alert, it's no longer lighting up the dining room, but it is lighting up my dahlias. Let's go there next. Idea number 15, the chandelier that swapped glam for garden. Now this one might be my most fabulous upcycle yet. So, there I was, digging through the attic looking for, honestly, I forget what. And I tripped over this dusty, tangled chandelier. The kind that used to hang in my dining room when we all thought fancy, meant 12 light bulbs and crystal dangly bits that collected more dust than compliments. It hadn't worked in years, and let's be honest, it was a bit much for my current taste in lighting. But just as I was about to donate it to some poor thrift store volunteer, a little voice in my head whispered, "What if this thing held flowers instead of bulbs?" And just like that, the chandelier got its second act. I removed the old wiring, cleaned it up, and placed small terracotta pots in each bulb socket. You can glue them in or use floral wire to secure them. Easy peasy. Then I planted a mix of bright blooms and trailing greens so each arm was overflowing with color, hung it from a sturdy tree branch, and honey. That thing sparkled in the sun. No electricity needed, just pure floral fabulousness. Now it's the talk of the yard. It twirls gently in the breeze like it's doing a little garden ballet, and every time I pass it, I think, you used to shine. Indoors, now you're blooming under the sky. Isn't that something? And let me tell you, if you thought that was dramatic, just wait till I show you how I gave an old bicycle one last ride, straight into the flower bed. You're going to love this next one. Idea number 16, the bicycle that rode into bloom. Okay, let me just say, this next one might be the most romantic thing in my entire garden. And no, I don't mean candlelit dinners and soft music. I'm talking about the kind of romance that makes people stop, stare, and whisper, "Oh wow, look at that." It all started with an old bicycle I just couldn't throw away. The tires were flat, the seat was cracked, and the chain hadn't moved in years. It had been leaning against my shed like it was waiting for one last adventure. Well, it got one. Rolled that rusty sweetheart into the garden, propped it up in the soft grass, and gave it a new purpose. I attached wire baskets to the front handlebars and the back rack, filled them with petunias, ivy, and trailing nasturtiums, and suddenly, it wasn't just an old bike. It was a moving piece of garden art. Okay, it doesn't actually move, but it sure looks like it could ride off into the sunset with a bouquet in its basket. And here's the best part. I left the rust. Gave it a light brush off, sure, but I didn't repaint a thing. That weathered frame told a story of childhood, rides, windy spring days, and maybe a topple or two down a gravel path. It brought soul to the scene. Now it sits there, flowers flowing, leaning just a little, like it's resting after a beautiful journey. And every time I walk by, I swear it winks at me. Ready for more? Because next up, we're trading wheels for windows, literally. I'll show you how I turned an old window frame into a garden mirror that reflects more than just light. It's reflective and poetic. Let's keep going. Idea number 17. The window frame that reflected more than sunlight. Let me tell you, this one hits me right in the sentimental feels. I had this old wooden window frame from the house I grew up in. The glass was long gone. The paint was peeling like sunburn in July, and one of the corners was held together more by hope than nails. But I couldn't toss it. Too many memories lived in that frame. Too many days watching the world through it, rain sliding down the panes while I sipped tea in my fuzzy slippers. So instead of hiding it in the garage, I gave it new purpose. In the garden, I cleaned it up just enough to keep it from splintering, added a mirror behind the frame, and mounted it on the fence with some climbing jasmine growing nearby. And just like that, my little patch of backyard felt twice as big and 10 times more magical. The mirror caught the light, reflected the blooms, and created this beautiful illusion of space, like a secret garden opening up beyond the fence. And on still mornings, with the dew sparkling and the sun rising just right, it's like stepping into a painting. You don't have to use a mirror, by the way. You could hang the frame as is and let plants peek through the open panes, or back it with chicken wire and let a vine weave its way through like it's stitching. Time together. It's simple. It's meaningful. And every time I see it, it reminds me that even the things we look through can become things we look back on, with love. And coming up next, we're heading into kitchen territory again. Ever wondered what an old muffin tin could do in the garden? Let's just say it's gone from baking to blooming in the best possible way. Idea number 18, the muffin tin that sprouted a second life. Now, I never thought I'd say this, but that old muffin tin, it's no longer baking blueberry anything. It's officially in the gardening hall of fame. Here's how it happened. I was deep in a kitchen purge, you know, the kind where you find 5 spatulas and not a single matching lid. And I pulled out a muffin tin that had seen one too many sticky bun disasters. It was scratched, stained, and quite frankly, no longer fit for human food. But as I held it, I thought, well, those little cups are the perfect size for something. So I brought it outside, gave it a good scrub, filled each cup with soil, and planted, wait for it, succulents. Tiny, colorful, adorable succulents, all snug in their little muffin-shaped cradles. And let me tell you, it looked so stinking cute I nearly cried. It turned into this perfect tabletop centerpiece for my patio table. Portable, compact, and downright charming. It's also ideal if you've got limited mobility. No bending, no digging, just plant and enjoy. And if you're not into succulents, no problem. Use it to start herbs from seed or create a miniature fairy garden in each cup. Toss in a few decorative, stones, moss, or tiny figurines, and you've got a whole whimsical village happening in a $3 tin. You'd never guess it started its life-burning banana muffins in 1982. And guess what? We're not done yet. Because next I'm going to show you how a humble garden hose, yes, the cracked, kinked, impossible to rewind one, can be twisted into something truly wreath-worthy. You won't believe it until you see it. Let's go. Idea number 19. The garden hose that came full circle, literally. Oh, this one had me laughing the whole way through. You ever fight with an old garden hose? I mean really fight with it? The kind that knots itself like it's training for Cirque du Soleil. Kinks in 3 places at once and leaks just enough to soak your socks but not actually water the plants. Well, I had one of those. And after one final tangle that ended with me saying words I won't repeat on camera, I decided that hose was done watering, but not done helping. So I coiled it up into a big loop, secured it with floral wire, and guess what it became? A wreath. Yep, a full-blown front door, Pinterest-worthy garden hose wreath. Then I got cheeky with it. I tied on a burlap bow, stuck, in a few silk flowers, added a pair of mini gardening gloves and a plastic trowel for flair, and boom. It was adorable, quirky, and absolutely perfect for anyone who loves gardening enough to hang it on their front door like a badge of honor. And let me tell you, when people walk up and realize it's a hose, they grin, because it's unexpected, it's creative, and let's be honest, it's the only time that hose has ever behaved. The best part? You can make it your own. Add seed packets, wind twine through it, hang it on your garden shed or gate for a playful touch that says, yes, I grow things, and I'm fabulous while I do it. And now, my friend, we've reached the final idea. One more little transformation that brings everything full circle. An old drawer, a teacup, a boot, they all had a second chance. But this last one, it's about memory, meaning, and maybe a little music. Let's finish strong. Idea number 20. The wind chime made from a life well lived. This one's for the soul. I was cleaning out a box of odds and ends from the attic, things too random to throw away, but too precious to explain. A few old spoons, a house, key that no longer fit any door, the bell from my childhood bike, and a charm bracelet missing most of its charms. And I thought, what if these little bits of my past could still sing? So I gathered them up, grabbed a piece of driftwood from the garden, and started tying each item on with fishing line and twine. I didn't follow any pattern, just listened to instinct. And when I hung it on the back porch, that little wind chime caught the breeze and made the sweetest, softest sound, not loud, not showy, just gentle notes, dancing through the air like little echoes from my own story. There's something deeply comforting about it, a kind of quiet reminder that our lives are made up of tiny, beautiful moments, and when we let them, they still make music. You could use old silverware, vintage keys, pieces of broken jewelry, even buttons or tiny bells. Whatever speaks to you, whatever carries meaning, let it hang, let it move. Let it whisper your memories back to you when the wind stirs. And that, my dear friend, brings us full circle. Because every piece we've used, every tin, can, drawer, boot, frame and whisk was something that once had a different purpose, something that might have been tossed aside, forgotten, overlooked, just like all of us at some point. But when we look a little closer, when we nurture the old and love the one and celebrate the imperfect, everything finds its place again. And oh, what a beautiful place it can be. So go ahead, dig into those closets, that garage, that shed full of someday stuff, because someday is now. And if this inspired you even a little, give it a like. Drop a comment about your favorite repurposed treasure, and make sure you subscribe. We've got so many more beautiful second chances to share together. Until next time, keep growing, keep glowing, and remember, your story's not over yet. It's just getting interesting.